Hi and welcome to the British Accent Podcast. I'm Emily.
And I'm Nick. In today's episode, we're diving into something that often gets forgotten when people talk about learning English, the reason behind it. Not just to impress others, but to connect.
Yeah, I think that's something so many learners struggle with, even if they don't say it out loud. That pressure to sound perfect. To speak English so fluently that people will think, wow, they're amazing.
But the truth is, that kind of pressure can take away from what really matters, which is connection. Language isn't about performing. It's about being understood. Being heard. Being human with someone else.
And it's easy to forget that. Especially online, where everyone's showing off polished versions of themselves. You start thinking, if I make one mistake, I'll sound stupid, or if my accent shows, people will judge me.
Yeah, and that mindset can make speaking feel like a test instead of a conversation. But the real power of English, or any language, is in helping you reach people. To share ideas. To ask questions. To laugh. To relate.
I've had conversations in very simple English that were far more meaningful than ones full of complicated vocabulary. Because it's not the level of your language that creates connection, it's the intention behind it.
And the moment you stop chasing perfection and start focusing on connection, something shifts. You stop panicking about every word. You start listening more. You start caring more about the person you're speaking with than how you sound.
And ironically, that's when your English starts to flow better. Because you're no longer trying to impress, you're just showing up. As you are. With honesty. With curiosity. With your real voice.
And people feel that. They feel when you're speaking to them, not at them. And that's where real conversations begin, even if your grammar's off. Even if you pause. Even if you search for words.
And that's something I wish more learners believed. That their English doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. You can still move someone. You can still be kind, funny, thoughtful, with simple words, with mistakes, with pauses.
Absolutely. Some of the most beautiful things people have ever said to me in English came from people who weren't fluent. But the way they said it, the sincerity, that stayed with me.
I think when you stop trying to impress, you become more present. You stop overthinking your accent, your vocabulary, and instead you start asking things like, how are you, really, or what do you think about that?
And when you do that, when you ask those kinds of questions, you're opening a door. You're saying, I want to know you. And that matters so much more than sounding like a native speaker.
It's funny, isn't it? The thing that makes us most nervous, speaking, is also the very thing that allows us to connect. To understand someone we wouldn't have been able to without English.
And that's what makes this journey worth it. It's not just so you can pass a test or impress someone in a meeting. It's so you can share a part of yourself. So you can listen to someone else. So you can relate.
Exactly. And when you realize that, the pressure starts to fade a little. You still want to improve, of course, but not because you want to sound perfect. Because you want to be closer to people. Because you care about what they are saying and how you respond.
And that kind of learning, the kind that's rooted in connection, it's more sustainable. It keeps you going when motivation fades. Because it's not just about you. It's about the relationships English makes possible.
And it doesn't matter if your English is advanced or just beginning. If your words are honest and your heart is open, people feel that. And that's what creates real moments of understanding.
And the thing is, people remember how you made them feel. Not how perfect your grammar was. Not whether you used fancy vocabulary. But whether you looked them in the eye. Whether you listened. Whether you made them feel seen.
Yeah, and you don't need perfect English for that. You just need to show up. Fully. And be willing to share a little of yourself, even if it's clumsy. Even if it's slow. It still matters.
And I think when learners let go of the idea that they have to impress people with their English, they start to actually enjoy the process more. It becomes less about pressure and more about possibility.
Exactly. Suddenly, English becomes a tool for curiosity. You start asking more questions. You start learning about people's cultures, ideas, jokes. You start forming real relationships.
And you also start seeing how universal we all are. Like, someone from Brazil and someone from Japan might speak to each other in English, and even though it's neither of their first languages, they connect.
That's something I really love. English becomes this bridge. Not because it's better than any other language, but because it's the shared space where people from different backgrounds meet.
And in that space, there's so much room for empathy. For learning. For recognizing that we all make mistakes. We all have awkward moments. But we still try. And that effort, that willingness, is where connection starts.
Sometimes I think the most beautiful English is the kind that's full of effort. Full of pauses. Full of small mistakes. Because it shows someone cared enough to try. That they wanted to reach you, even if the words weren't perfect.
Yeah, and when you look at it that way, English stops being a performance. It becomes something human. Something shared. Something alive.
And honestly, that takes the pressure off. You're no longer chasing someone else's idea of perfect English. You're using it in your own way. To build something real. To connect with people you care about, or people you're just getting to know.
And when you focus on connection instead of impression, your English becomes more flexible. More natural. You start letting go of the fear of sounding wrong, and you lean into curiosity.
And curiosity is such a powerful thing in language learning. It makes you ask better questions. It makes you listen with more intention. It turns every conversation into a learning moment, but in a way that doesn't feel like a lesson.
Right. You're not sitting there thinking, I need to get this sentence exactly right. You're thinking, I want to understand this person. And that mindset is what helps you grow without burning out.
It also builds confidence. Because when someone responds to you warmly, even though you made a mistake, it reminds you, people care more about connection than accuracy.
And once you've experienced that, even just once, you carry it with you. The next time you speak, you feel a bit lighter. A bit braver. Because you know the goal isn't to impress, it's to relate.
Exactly. And that kind of English feels more like a part of you. Not something you perform, but something you live. Something you use to tell stories, to ask for help, to say thank you, to share your thoughts and ideas.
And that's the real heart of it. English isn't just a skill to show off. It's a way to be with people. To build trust. To feel close, even across different cultures and countries.
And I think when you approach it from that place of connection, not performance, your English starts to reflect who you really are. Not just how much you've studied, but what kind of listener, what kind of friend, what kind of person you are.
And honestly, that's what people remember. They remember that you listened with care. That you tried. That you stayed in the conversation, even when it was hard. And that stays with them, far more than your pronunciation or vocabulary ever will.
Yeah. The things we think people notice, like our grammar mistakes, or our accent, they fade into the background when there's real presence in the conversation. When there's eye contact, kindness, curiosity.
It's like, when someone is speaking to you in their second language, and you can see they are putting effort in, you automatically want to meet them halfway. You slow down, you listen better, you soften. That's human connection.
That's it. It's mutual. Language is a shared space. And when we focus too much on impressing people, we forget that shared part. We think it's all on us to perform. But really, it's a two-way thing. Always.
Yeah. The responsibility doesn't fall just on the learner. Communication is something we create together, through patience, understanding, and willingness.
And that's why some of the strongest English learners are the ones who focus on relationships, not perfection. They ask questions. They let themselves be seen. They bring their full self to the table, even if their English isn't advanced.
And people feel that. You know when someone's being real with you. You know when someone's showing up with warmth and effort. And those are the conversations that stay with you, long after you forget the actual words.
It's a powerful thing, to be able to connect across languages, across cultures. And when your goal is to truly connect, your English becomes a bridge. Not a wall you have to climb, but a bridge you build every time you speak.
And even if it feels shaky at first, that bridge gets stronger every time you use it. Because it's not built with perfect sentences, it's built with intention, and openness, and courage.
So if you've been learning English just to impress people, maybe try shifting your focus. Try asking, who can I connect with, instead of, who will be impressed by me? You might find that your English, and your experience, becomes so much more meaningful.
Because in the end, it's not about sounding flawless. It's about being real. Being curious. Being present. And that kind of English doesn't just open doors, it opens hearts.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope this episode reminded you that your English is enough, not because it's perfect, but because you're using it to connect.
Take care of yourself, keep showing up, and we'll speak to you again soon.